The story begins on a small boat sailing along a river, and on that boat there lived a family. In this family, there was a father, a mother, and a young daughter. They lived a simple life after a zombie outbreak. Although sometimes they would sail and encounter others, there wasn't much of a welcoming from strangers. For instance, now they had come across another family living by the river. A simple greeting, and the other family wouldn't respond much. Their current situation wasn't great. Food was running low, maybe enough for 2-3 more days, so they had to look for other sources to stock up. But then, the father found a floating box in the water. He immediately scooped it up and discovered a map showing the zombie spread. The mother suggested that they were only 30 kilometers away from the city, and if they could get there, they might find food. However, taking the boat to the shore was too dangerous. Later on, by stroke of luck, they came across an abandoned boat. The father went inside to investigate and found some supplies. He was delighted because one of the supplies included a bottle of wine. But while he was gathering food for storage, he heard strange noises coming from inside. So the father quickly gathered his things and left. Returning to the boat, the mother noticed that the father had secretly paddled to collect supplies without telling her. She expressed her frustration, but the father defended himself, saying it was urgent and not a big deal. Feeling exhausted, the father asked for some rest. Meanwhile, the mother inspected the supplies they had gathered. Among them was a bottle of wine and a small note the father had prepared to celebrate their anniversary. The mother decided to surprise the father. She rowed the boat out without telling anyone. Arriving at the other boat, she found a beard trimmer, which they didn't have. She thought it would make a great gift. However, she didn't make it back in time and was bitten by a zombie. Despite the attack, she managed to return to their boat. When her husband woke up, he couldn't find his wife and noticed bloodstains on the floor. Worried, he opened the bathroom door to find his wife had been bitten by a zombie. His wife had only 48 hours before turning into a zombie herself. She sat down and realized she was going to change. She decided to use the survival equipment from the box to avoid endangering others. Luckily, her husband entered the room first, so she quickly hid the equipment. When he came in, he told her they needed to head to the city, specifically to the hospital. They left the boat and walked for a while. Luckily, they stumbled upon a parked car and drove away together. While driving, the child kneaded and soiling her pants. It was time to change her diaper. When she went to check, her husband realized she wasn't there. He went to look and found her lying on the ground. Her condition had worsened. Now, yellowish mucus was oozing from her wound. She urgently asked her husband to stop the car, then told him to take their child and leave her behind. However, the husband refused and insisted on taking her with them. As they continued driving, he glanced back at her, but just then, he saw zombies standing in the middle of the road. They swerved to avoid the zombies, causing an accident, colliding with a tree. The husband regained consciousness and looked at his wife, who had been impaled by a tree branch. She had turned into a zombie. At this point, he wailed until it felt like his insides were about to explode. Looking down at the floor, he noticed his own survival equipment because he was now infected with the zombie virus too. But it seemed he couldn't go through with it because he still had his young child. In the end, the husband managed to carry their child and had to be the one to end his wife's life with his own hands. Now, it was just the child and the infected father. There was some silver lining. He knew that his child loved the smell of flowers. He sat down, looking around, and saw that specific zombie, the zombie that had caused the accident. He spoke, "You know what you did." He told it to leave and picked up a stick. But then, a local girl ran out of the forest, warning them not to mess with her father. This girl lured the zombies away with her own blood. Later, the father and his daughter had to keep walking until they reached the hospital, which was their destination. It was just as dark there, There might not be anyone. They entered and finally stopped in one room. When he turned on the flashlight, he saw a nurse here. She helped treat his wound and noticed that he had a young child with him. This toddler was named Rosie, and the nurse introduced herself as Etta, a nurse and a teacher who lived here. Her students were the local indigenous children who were still living a traditional lifestyle. Etta pointed the way for him to go. She advised him to find Willow and Toomey, the safest route that would keep his daughter safe from the spreading zombie outbreak. The protagonist knew these people and had to go back to where he had encountered the child, and that particular zombie walked further along the road. He encountered a parked car. He was about to open the car door when screams erupted from behind the car. The gunshots were not meant for me. The one trapped in the gas tank underground. He couldn't get out by himself because he was trapped under the gas tank. The man asked me to drive the car and pull the gas tank out. The stranger took back to his shelter, which was safe and had a woman who seemed unenthusiastic. The stranger's name was Vic, and she spoke of the wick as the man gestured. She didn't seem very welcoming. Eddie and Vic walked over to where the child was playing with. She realized there was green zombie mucus on the child's clothes. She was quite worried about Rosie. Eddie and Vic walked to another spot, which was the pit they used for attracting zombies. Vic told Eddie that this was the situation, and they needed to act quickly. They gathered gasoline, oil, and valuables. When they returned to the pit, they found a girl inside it, the same girl they had encountered before. Eddie and Vic continued on to another location, which had another cage with fresh blood to attract zombies, and the people there were the elder members of the indigenous community. Eddie and Vic then returned to their shelter. When Eddie met Vic's wife, she mentioned that she had given Rosie a bath to check for any wounds. She knows well that those infected with the zombie virus are Eddie's, but she haven't said anything. If she speak out, Vic will likely kill Eddie immediately. In the middle of that night, Eddie was with his child. It might be the last night, and the time had come. Here, it's safe, and someone takes care of Rosie. If he ends his life here, Rosie will remain safe. With such thoughts, Eddie made the decision to walk out and took the first aid kit with him. After that, he picked up a needle to end his life. Eddie hesitated for a while. Then, Vic's wife walked in, seeing what Eddie was about to do. She told him to stop. She said, "I know what you're about to do and why. This place isn't safe either. Vic is not my husband. He turned my husband into a zombie, and others suffered the same fate. Help me get out of here." Eddie said he has only 20 hours left. Before she could say more, Vic, who had been quietly following, walked in and shot Eddie until he fell. Realizing this, Eddie emerged inside Toomey's cage. They were chained together, Eddie and Toomey, their hands locked in the villain's cage. They noticed a device, and they came up with a plan. They attached the device to a cloth and lured the zombies to eat it, intending to use the zombies' force to open the bottom of the cage, and they both managed to escape. Eddie and Toomey rushed to find Rosie, who was with Vic's wife. They woke her up and took her along while Vic was still asleep. However, they didn't forget to take the key with them. They tried to sneak out without waking Vic, but their plan failed. Vic aimed his gun at them, but at that moment, his wife walked in to intervene. Seeing this, Eddie and Toomey quickly fled, and they headed to another cage, which the elders of the Tuni tribe had prepared in advance. But when they reached the cage, it was empty. Eddie and Toomey sought refuge in a cave to escape from Vic. At that moment, Eddie was on the verge of becoming a zombie, and he could barely maintain his sanity. After regaining consciousness, they continued their journey, with their goal being the riverside where Eddie had come to find his family living, and they hoped to have them take care of Rosie. Eddie and Toomey paddled a boat they found along the way until they reached their destination. They drove the boat until they reached the shore where a family lived. Eddie entered the house but found no one there. Seeing this, he went to explore the surroundings. Finally, he found the family he had met before, but they were in the process of ending their lives. The father had turned into a zombie, and the mother thought it was better to end their lives, so all hope had vanished. They left the house, but took the family's gun with them, fearing that Eddie would shoot his daughter and end her life as well, as he had lost all hope. At that moment, Rosie said, "Daddy," which brought immense joy to her father. Eddie was overjoyed to hear his daughter's voice for the first time and didn't hesitate to act. Toomey rushed over to hold Rosie. Toomey suggested that they were close to her tribe and offered to leave Rosie there. Eddie agreed to the idea. And at this point, Eddie couldn't walk much, but he was gradually turning into a zombie. He spoke to Toomey, asking her to take care of his daughter. He gently laid his young daughter down and said his final farewell. And then, Eddie finally became a full zombie. Finally, he brought his daughter to the tribe. The tribe realized that Eddie's time was up, and they closed his life. Rosie received care from the local tribe, and the story came to an end in this way.